This might not come as a surprise, but Bitcoin has made a lot of people very rich. We're more than a decade into Bitcoin's life, and we're here to talk about whether it has lived up to its original promise and how it will shape the future. Here with me are Motherboard's Maxwell Strawn, an early Bitcoin adopter and current Chief Strategy Officer of CoinShares, Meltem Demirors. Meltem, Maxwell, thank you for joining me. Lot to talk about, but in order to talk about what Bitcoin is like today and its future, we got to go back in time and talk about how it was born, its history, its culture. Meltem, I imagine it might be a good idea to talk about your life and how you got into Bitcoin, because maybe it tracks to kind of the larger trajectory of where we are today.
Absolutely. I think like many people, when I first heard about Bitcoin, it was 2012, and Bitcoin was deeply ideological in nature and very closely aligned with this idea of crypto anarchism, crypto anarchy. And despite the fact that I grew up overseas, my parents are from a very poor rural part of Turkey, I should be someone who really understands financial exclusion and some of the issues in our current world, in particular in relation to financial violence, which is the most prevalent form of violence in our world today, but I really never thought about it. And when I first interacted with Bitcoin, I was confused by it, a little scared, a little weirded out. But the more I learned about Bitcoin, the more I started to understand that there is no way you can live in this world, look at what's happening in this world, and not be a political person. And Bitcoin is inherently political in its nature. Our aspirations are inherently political. And so when people talk about Bitcoin as an investment, in the early days when I got involved in Bitcoin, it was not about an investment. It was not about making money. It was not about, becoming a millionaire or billionaire. It was really about how do we use technology to subvert the current political, economic, and social climate and to introduce a new thing to the world, similar to what the cypherpunks did in 1992. But we finally had the ability and the technology to give people tools of economic self-sovereignty. And the great experiment we're attempting is the separation of money and state, which hasn't been done in over 3 millennia. Truly, it was a time, and it still is a movement that's very deeply rooted in changing some of the power structures in our world and understanding that money and greed can be a great flywheel to help get these ideas into the popular zeitgeist. And what I think is so interesting is people love to talk about cryptocurrencies as though there's some niche esoteric corner of finance. They are not. This is a $3 trillion asset class that we have memed into existence. It's wild.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it is crazy. Yeah, continue
wild, but we've done it. And I think what happens from here, we have crypto people who are running for office. We have people in the crypto ecosystem who are pooling their capital together to unseat incumbents and to vote in politicians who are pro-crypto. We have a whole swath of the American population that is focused on a single voting issue, which is what is the stance towards crypto and financial innovation. And I firmly believe that every company in the world will be a crypto company. They just don't know it yet.
So there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to get there. I want to bring you in, Maxwell, too, because I know you've done a lot of reporting in this about wealth, specifically about inequality and these sorts of things, and technology, of course. But Meltem, tell me about your life story, though. You got into it in 2012. How did you hear about it? What was it like? Did you start mining it? Like, how did you accrue a lot of it? Was there a moment where you're like, holy shit, I'm rich now? How did that go? Because I think, I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever sat at a table with someone who's made a ton of money from crypto. I've sat at a table with people who dally in it, maybe have a little bit of holdings, think it's interesting, chat about it. But this is the first time I'm face to face with someone who's like, boom, minted.
I don't know that I would identify myself as boom minted, but okay. For me, so I started interacting with it in 2012. My brother actually had told me about Bitcoin, and it was a really weird experience. At that point in time, Coinbase didn't exist. The only way you really could interact with Bitcoin was through a faucet, which is a website you would go to where people would stream small amounts of Bitcoin to people to help bootstrap adoption. And then in 2013, I went to grad school at MIT. And at the time, MIT was super active in the Bitcoin space. There was a ton of work happening in Boston. Some of the Bitcoin core developers were located in Boston, notably Gavin Andreessen, who is at Amherst College. And so I started getting more into like the fintech and crypto scene. And prior to that point in my life, like I had worked in corporate America. I was an executive in the oil and gas space, right? I'd never really done something like Bitcoin. I had never really heard of entrepreneurship, never really heard of fintech. And as I was leaving grad school, I was like, well, what am I gonna do with my life? What is actually interesting? Like what will actually make me feel something, right? And I was like, fuck, I'm gonna go work in Bitcoin. There's literally nothing else that I could spend my time on that is even remotely as impactful as Bitcoin. And I met a guy named Barry Silbert who was starting a company tentatively called Digital Currency Group. And the vision was to build the Berkshire Hathaway of Bitcoin, to build a multi-pronged investment firm where we would invest in all of the best Bitcoin companies in the world and then build businesses around Bitcoin, including a media business, an asset management business, a trading business, lending business, so on and so forth. And then I spent the next 3 years of my life just completely immersed in the Bitcoin ecosystem, working with core developers, working with entrepreneurs, working with financial institutions. I mean, I made the rounds in 2015 on the street pitching Bitcoin to banks, and everyone thought we were crazy. Everyone thought we were money launderers. Everyone thought, you know, we're like, oh shit, here's the Bitcoin lady. Don't talk to her, she's weird. And so in a way, the way it feels now, all of the things we thought about and we talked about in those early days when we were all poor and we had nothing. I mean, I had no money, right? I was living in a 300 square foot apartment, working on Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin went from $500 to $150. And I was like, fuck, what am I gonna do now?
As in, all your money went away.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was definitely a downturn, and there were definitely a lot of dark times. There were times where I wondered, you know, is this the right thing to be doing? But it was interesting. I have such a vivid memory of the day that Bitcoin hit $10,000 for the first time. It was November 27th, 2017. Or was it? It was a day in November. And we were all gathered in New York because the media company that we ran at the time was hosting the first ever investor-focused crypto event. And I vividly remember I had never owned a nice pair of shoes before. And so the moment that Bitcoin hit $10,000, I went on my little Net-a-Porter app and I bought like a nice pair of shoes for the first time. And I had them portered over to the conference and I put them on and I was like, whoa. And a bunch of us all put in 1.1 Bitcoin each, which is $1,000. And I think it was 100 of us. So we ended up having $100,000 and we threw a crazy party on the rooftop of the Public. And we were all like, what is happening? Why is this happening? Because it happened so fast and so intensely. And I just think there's so many really beautiful bonds and friendships that got created. And now we have the capital. Now we have the resources, not only on an individual level, but as companies. My company manages $7 billion in assets. We're a $1 billion publicly listed company. Other entrepreneurs I've worked with are running multi-billion-dollar protocols. Some of them have $10, $15 billion in their protocol treasuries. And so the conversations we're having now is, what do we do with this capital? We're all politically motivated. We're all ideologically motivated. And I believe that in the next decade, we can mint 1 million billionaires who are like myself and other people in the crypto community who have aspirations to radically alter the arc on which humanity is headed, to move in a more optimistic direction, to move in a technology-focused direction, but also to unlock human creativity in new ways and to enable people around the world to dream bigger, right? Like we've lived in this really weird time over the last 2 years. COVID, I think, has revealed the decay of our institutions and the complete inability of the existing institutions we have to grapple with change. And so there is this beautiful open question of, what do we build next? What do we do next? And I think it's incredible that we have a community of people who are leading with technology. The tenets are open source, decentralized, permissionless, and these people are empowered with capital, and they're motivated to build.